Google Hangout was warning me that you only can broadcast up to 8 hours. I'm like, geez, it's a long brown back. So,
Limited.
yeah, so virtual brown bag meeting, February 16th, 2016. So 1616, I wrote that down today in my journal. I was like, oh, hey, look, nothing important, but cool. Um, so yeah, so I guess we'll just get started. There's some things to share. Let me share some news. We started working on, like making us more legit and like actually like market some of the stuff, like instead of just
Mhm.
doing whatever. Um, we have a website. Yeah, see, I kept the URL all these years.
All
So,
right, that's good.
um, obviously, it's really stylish and awesome. So you got that going for it. It's we show the time. We have our Twitter account, and we now have a Slack channel set up too. So you can just go to slack.virtualbrownbag.com and you can join the Slack channel. And the purpose sort of behind creating a Slack channel so you can talk with people to help, but also just so like if you want to be reminded when the meeting's going on, we'll just broadcast to. Right now, broadcast to the general channel, but we might make it more filtered if some people don't like that. But I guess my point of view is if you're in the virtual brown bag Slack channel, you sort of expect to be notified when the virtual brown bag's happening. Um,
Right.
Also working on maybe trying to set up a virtual brown bag community on Google Plus for the same ideas. What we're looking for is different avenues of communication so that we can remind people that the meeting is coming up and the meeting is live. Um,
Okay.
so that's what we're working on there.
So where's the
Good.
IRC channel at then?
Ask George. George can manage the IRC channel.
I will not be doing that. Well, Freenode, that's where it is, right?
Yeah, Freenode.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I still think that we need a constant link, and I mean, I think that the way to do that would be to put something up on, like say virtualbrownbag.com/current next meeting or something like that, and just have that redirect to whatever the current meeting is or the next one.
Yeah. So yeah, if everyone's up to speed on it, so they know like why don't we have a permanent link for Google Hangouts? Is because Google Hangouts on air, the way that we're doing it, they don't let you schedule a recurring meeting. And since they don't let you reschedule a recurring meeting, there's not a consistent URL. So what we would have to do is, I guess maybe we just get in the practice of scheduling the next one, like, and then setting the URL like on a certain day.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you go, but it doesn't matter if everyone's linking to / the next meeting. You just go in at any time during the week and add the new link in there.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's fine.
Maybe if I get in the habit of scheduling it Monday.
Yeah.
Or we'll figure out when.
But the link, there is a consistent redirect link to.
Yes. Okay. All right. We do have a Trello board. Are we making that public, or are we just keeping that Trello board private?
I don't know. Make it public. Who cares?
All right. So people.
I'm not putting dirty secrets about Claudio in there.
Yeah. So I'll work on making this thing.
Okay.
I'll work on making it public. There, I did it. Here.
For people joining right now, we're just talking general organizational stuff. Since we're just getting this going, the structure and how we're going to do this, and we're going to start booking people. I don't know. I think I have a booking.
Yeah.
That'd be for React Native in like a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah, you have it. Next week is.
Next week.
Yeah. So next week we have. Is it Gant Laborde?
Gant Laborde, yeah. He's talking about React Native.
React Native, and then the week after that, I'm excited about with Brian Joseph presenting Elixir script because I'm going to be picking his brain. And then I've got a couple people I'll be trying to sign up. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get Ben Sherman to come on talk about like. Basically, I'm just going to say, Ben, just show up and we'll just talk about whatever comes up top.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
So he does NS screencasts and iOS stuff, but the topic we were sort of discussing in our Slack was the idea of like deployments and how he does deployments and Docker and so forth. And then I have Anthony, who was talking to one of the previous brown bags. He wants to do share integrating Ruby gaming and Node gaming with Twitch channel stuff. So he's really big on the idea that it'll be having community group gaming through Twitch channel communication. He really likes that type of stuff. So I figured, hey, that'd be pretty cool to see.
And if anyone here has a talk that they want to give, well, let me or one of us know, and absolutely, and we'll set it up. But we've got a calendar now and everything.
Yeah, I need to start adding the calendar on the website so that people can see what's coming up. And the idea behind this sharing too is it isn't if people are not supposed to show up and then give us a 40-minute slide presentation show, like that's a user group thing. This is more about hacking on some stuff, talking about some things, and just more having that conversation so about it. Then let's just go through a bunch of slides.
But at the same time, we want some consistency. So you're going to get the 30-minute presentation and then kind of open house the rest of the 15 to 30. Yeah. Cool. Well, do you guys have anything? Does anyone have anything they want to show? Because I have one thing.
I have one little side thing discussion. Mine is, so lately, I've been hating on Ember Data because Ember Data and me just have an ongoing hate relationship, and so I was kind of like, all right, you know what? I really loved Angular 1. Let me see. Maybe I'd not give Angular 2 a good shot. So one of the times I would probably like to hack with someone who knows Angular 2. So if you know people who know Angular 2, I would love to sit down and hack through some stuff with them because I want to give it a good shot. But that being said, when I look at Angular 2, I look at it and I'm going, what? Like my tagline for Angular 2 when I looked at it yesterday is bringing the Java back to JavaScript.
Jesus.
It's like, what am I doing here? Dependency injection, types, and like, it was just, I was like, oh no, man, this doesn't look like JavaScript.
I have hopes for Angular since I hate it too, since I hate Angular 1 so much, but that's not making me feel good.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. Someone I would like to have someone who's really good. Might still be one of the times like after, because we used to do that too, like the whole like, let's just install it and hello world it together as a group, like figure this stuff out. I'm sure some people would be interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of Aurelia?
Yes, it's because same. I forgot his name now. Did it with Durandal, right? To what's his name?
Rob Eisenberg.
Rob Eisenberg. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Aurelia, right?
You want some presentations on Aurelia? I know someone that's been doing it professionally for a while.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind to have someone come in there and persuade me on it. Yeah. So far, we actually had that discussion as a team about like, and see if you all have the same experience. We've been lately noticing that previously with JavaScript frameworks, everyone was so excited about the one that they're working on, and lately all our conversations are really about like how terrible the ones we're working on are. Like no one is like super jazzed about any of them, and
I think React is closest. I think React is still a little overblown. Honestly, so there's an article that I read recently, because I was thinking, what would I like a JavaScript framework to be? And there's an article I was reading recently about the guy Nolan Lawson, the guy who built he built a bunch of stuff at Pokedex.org. He wrote an article about how he built that, and what he did there is probably the closest thing I've heard to what I actually would ideally do. Basically, what he's doing is he's not using React, but he's using the virtual DOM piece of it. He's running a web worker, which is just his, and then he's just leaving the UI thread alone. And then he's doing all the virtual DOM computation on the web worker, which is just kind of coded up by himself, and sending patches across to the UI thread and letting it apply. And it sounds very, very nice in that application. Super snappy. Works offline. It's really, really nice.
What is it called again?
Here, let me pull it up. It's Pokedex, which is
.org.
Well, yeah, but
that how we spell it?
Here, let me share my screen and I'll
Not that.
Find it.
Yeah. not the encyclopedia for Pokemon.
Yeah, actually, it exactly is the encyclopedia for Pokemon. That's the exact one, but you want to see like his write-up of what he actually did.
Introducing this, is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, he did this how to think of databases thing, which is pretty good. But it's a little weird. It's like very straightforward for like 2/3 of it, and then gets like super technical in the last third. But yeah, this introducing Pokedocs.org on Pocket JavaScript, super nice. But I mean, I still think React is kind of closest to what we really want.
What do we really want?
Honestly, I want something that's simple, embraces the good parts of JavaScript, doesn't add a whole bunch of other structures to learn. Ideally, I want something that is as simple to learn as possible while remaining as completely flexible as possible. And for me, where Angular doesn't hit that spot is all those structures that you have to learn to do it effectively, right? And there's a lot of other problems that I have with Angular, but really, there's so much stuff that you're learning with Angular, you might as well just be learning an entirely new language, almost. Like, you're not using a lot of your JavaScript knowledge at that point. And JavaScript, like the core good parts of JavaScript, aren't so complex, and they can be combined so many ways. I mean,
well, it kind of breaks down to that same analogy if you compare it to like the whole Rails environment, Ruby on Rails and stuff, where Rails is like this full feature, batteries included, all these different little packages put together, like an ecosystem, and then you have Sinatra and the like, which are like these modular, separate, independently standing pieces of code, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to compare it to Rails. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I would also stop a little short. I mean, like at that point, my argument against Angular would become, yeah, but all those other things that I can mention that drive me nuts about it. But yeah, I mean, I think at its core, yes. I still wish if they did it better, they would have a much better case in my eyes. But I still wouldn't like it because the core philosophy is not one that I agree with.
I think mine is about productivity and like how much it takes. The learning is, we're both circling on that. It's like, it's just tired of learning all these new things and all this framework. And I feel like almost like the problem is that now we have, previously it was like full stack developer, and it's getting more and more difficult to be full stack developer, but now you have these people that all they are front end engineers. And so front end engineers, you leave them alone, what are they going to do? They're going to engineer. And like, next thing you know, there's like these crazy framework things, and you're just like, look, dude, I just need to get some data and put it on the web page. You know, like, I'm not really worried about it.
Let's be honest. Anyone who's a front-end engineer is a front-end engineer because they haven't been doing this for that long. And that's just all that they've focused on.
There's some good front-end engineers.
No, I'm not saying they're bad. Yeah. But I mean, they haven't been around for that long, because if they were around 10 years ago, they wouldn't. That was not a term. Like, they would have been doing a lot of back-end stuff. So these are people that haven't been doing front-end development they haven't been doing development, period, for very long, and no duh, they're overcomplicating things. Like, 5 years in is exactly the point where you make stuff super complicated.
I can kind of see that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that, like, at times, so you compared Rails to Angular. I wouldn't compare Rails to Angular. I would compare Rails to Ember because that makes the most sense. And then I would compare, because you also have the Ember CLI, so there's sort of that package there. Angular was a lot more to me like, I would almost like say Express, where it has a whole bunch of stuff, but then like you can still build it anywhere you sort of want to, and like there's still a lot of frameworky things you need to load, but then there's also a lot of customization you need to do. And I'm not an Express fan, but I am an Angular fan. But that's neither here nor there.
You've been working in Ember Data, is that what you're saying, John?
Yeah, I've been using Ember CLI now for the project for about, I guess, 3-4 months now. So probably 4 months, I would say, because I was going to translate my previous startup to use Ember, but then that startup got bought out, so now we're doing the new one in Ember with the Phoenix backend.
I first picked up Ember a couple of years ago, and I was at a company that had very strict like software vendor policies. So we at first weren't even running Node and couldn't use the CLI. So I learned Ember without the CLI, and then when I finally started using the CLI, I found it really frustrating and cumbersome. What about you?
I come from, I think, the Rails side, and I love Phoenix too. That I don't like builds and other complications, and so the Ember CLI doing that for me is nice. So I like Ember in Ember CLI. I still hate with a burning passion Ember data. It's because the way Ember data wants to work isn't the way I like to work, and
Yeah.
now this JSON API stuff, which on one hand, at least I know what Ember data wants me to return, is still a pain in the butt to return in that format.
What's the problem with Ember data? I actually had a pretty positive experience with it myself.
So the problem with Ember data has to do with, and it like when things are loaded and when they're not. And Ember data, the way that asynchronous relationships are great, except for the scenarios where you easily get n+1. You know, like you're coding, mind your own business. The next thing you know, you're like, holy crap, this page has 90 network requests. You know, like, and then you have this scenario.
Hold on. Why don't you define what n+1 is? Because I think a lot of people don't know that term.
So n+1 would be the scenario of, let's say you have a blog, and a blog has many posts. So your blog is your 1, and your posts are n. So you have n+1 requests. So I made 1 request for the blog, and then I made n number requests for all my different posts. And so you can quickly come to that scenario where it just gets astronomically large, because now let's say you have posts with comments that have sub-comments, and now suddenly we have like 50 million requests to show this 1 bit of data.
Yeah, wasn't that like where you get into basically lazy loading the data as necessary?
Yeah, and then you have that, and then you also have the problem where, like, okay, so let's say you have a collection of blogs, which is really cool. So I'm gonna look at my collection of blogs, but I'm not gonna store all the information on it because it's just a collection. But then I want to show the blog posts and get more information from there. There's problems where, like, you're not getting all the data because Ember data sometimes thinks it has all the data, but it doesn't. You know, like, because you're returning different subsets for different requests.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's hard to put in like words. Like, you run into these different scenarios, and then you're just scratching your head like, that isn't the way I expected it to work. The WTF moments. And then with Ember, you have the what we call, like, this is the quintessential Ember problem, which is we were trying to figure out. Here, let's see if I can pull that up. I don't think there's any reason why. Let me see if I can get that. I know you can't see anything right now. Let me pull it up and then I'll share. I gotta make sure what branch we're on. All right, let's see. Share. So, share.
Are any of you guys actually brown bagging right now?
No, I eat ahead of time because sharing. So.
Yeah, I went to public market beforehand.
All right, so can you see my Atom?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're redesigning we're making our web UI into components, which has been freaking awesome. So, like, the team I'm working with is fantastic. I've never worked with with a team that, like, we just all work together perfectly. So, because where we're weakest, like, someone else is strongest, and so it's just immediately we can hand certain things back and forth.
That hurts, JB.
Yeah, well, it just is. If we're rewriting in Hibernate or something, it'll be something different. But no. So we had me and the UI guy were like, we hate this design, it's terrible. And so he's like, I'm gonna go mock something up. He mocks something up, gets it, look at it, we get approval, and, like, we get it built out, like, in one day. So that was one thing too. He was like, I've never worked with a person in the team who's like, we can get, like, pixel perfect designs, like, in a day. And I was like, you just show me what you want, we can make it happen. But the quintessential Ember thing that happened was, so actually I'm probably gonna have to share more than this, aren't I? I'm gonna have to share, like, my entire screen so you can see what the friggin' app looks like. Share. Booyah. Oh man, I'm going to have to run it too, aren't I? When you give a mouse a cookie situation here. You can do your thing. It's thinking about it. There we go. So what we wanted to do was we had these cards that would be table cards, and so that they would show data. It's thinking. So actually, what's dashboard up? It has that way mocked out. There we go. So here's the dashboard we mocked out. So what we wanted to have is we have this table of data, and we want to have the ability to page through it and be able to search, so it and have that as a card component that we could just send any data source that we wanted into it and get these features built in. So to use this, what we wanted to have is, let's see, we're under staffing group dashboard. So we have our parent component. Oh, this is just a regular card. Let's go table card. So we have our parent component, and then we have inside there the inside, which is what we yield to our component. We can draw things in with it. The problem is we wanted to use data from the parent inside our little yield. So it was weird. We couldn't figure it out. The solution is using this as block. This is, to me, was the quintessential Ember thing. That after you know how it works, it makes perfect sense how it works. But finding out how it works involves like GitHub issues, blog posts, digging through all sorts of craziness to find it, and then going, oh, and then once you know, it's like that makes perfect sense. But trying is like it wasn't self-discoverable. Like this, how we discovered this was GitHub issues and commits. Like diving through like people wanting this and propose this and that and digging through all the stuff and finally saw it and you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Well, once you figured it out though, you made a pull request to clarify the documentation, right?
No, because they don't pay me to do documentation.
Bad soul.
Yeah, no, terrible. I'd rather just complain about it. Unless someone else do it. So, but this data, so table card.
That sounds like how I learn everything.
Yeah. So, if we go to our components and then our table card, we can see inside our template. Is that right? Yes. So inside here, where you yield, you pass in a property, and that the order of these properties is the order of what is populated back out here. So collection is matched into collection, not by the name, but by the order for which you yielded. And collection itself is a computer property. We actually refactored this in another branch to be less terrible. But so that's how that data passed through. And that was, to me, the typical Ember situation. The first was like, we couldn't figure it out. Once we figured out the solution, it made perfect sense. And then we're going forward. We ran into a problem with this card that we had to fix was when we passed in, like this worked great with arrays, but when with the route was passing in the model, and the model was a collection, the dot length property was not right. So it was not right because it was a computed property because data was still being resolved, I guess. So what we had to change this dot length to be data dot length because then the getter would wait till the value got resolved to return it. So it's weird things like that like after we understood it, we were like, okay, that makes sense why it behaved that way. But when you first got it, it's just a bunch of WTFs because you're looking like, why because it was doing this value right here was returning not a number. So and then they're like, okay, like what's going on here? Because computer property divided by 10 is not a number. Oh, and also here's another thing inside here. So we're searching. Like, here's also a little craziness to figure out. So we're doing. You can't pass arrays as properties into Ember components. So we're passing in a string that we're parsing the JSON to get an array. And so that's when they're like, what? And if you do double quotes on the outside and single quotes on the inside, you're going to get a JSON error. Because it's going to be like, that is not valid right here.
So eval, don't parse.
Yeah, like, so it blows up on you. But that's one of the things, like, okay, we want to expose this for someone to use. That's going to be an esoteric thing that you're going to figure it out. And we're not really sure because we're like, it's so weird that what if we I guess we should make it a property that you pass in. But here,
That seems to be the recommended way.
yeah, and so see, look, you get an unexpected token. Yeah, it would be I think the recommended way, but then that balances out with, yeah, but isn't it nice that on your table card you can look in and you say which properties you want this sort, versus it's going to be back on the controller. So anyway, that's sort of the weirdness we battle on a daily basis.
How long have you been doing the Ember data stuff?
I'd say it's for 4 months, but like obviously there's a bunch of other stuff that's been going on too with it. Mirage is freaking awesome.
What's that?
For Ember.
I am Bonnie Bull, inviting you to sell it.
So what it allows you to do is you can easily make fake routes and fake data, so that if our front end, you can do development and not even worry about the back end. Like when we first made this, our first month, we didn't even do a back end. We were just doing all front end with fake data. We're like, okay, this is the route we expect to have. This is the data return, and you can sort of test that the format and the data that you want to return can all be there. And Mirage is everything you set for Mirage when you're doing your dev environment is loaded for your tests. So like those are the fixtures that are there for your tests too.
Oh, this is all client side. That's cute.
Yeah.
That's rude.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. I've hacked that together before. That's nice.
Yeah, but I don't have to. I just install it and get going.
Yeah, I know. And they call it Mirage and stuff like that. That's what I mean.
Yeah, let's see if they at the time though they didn't have JSON API. Let's see if they started adding. I know someone was saying that they have it now in a branch. Yeah, see, it requires a bit more work, but having that not as a branch would be awesome because we had to roll everything ourselves. So if we look here up at our Mirage stuff, so we're like, hey, we need to get insert into a DB, and let's see, we get okay, we want to get our sections. We need to map the section, and map section is way down here where we have all these map functions that took our objects and put them in the JSON API format. And you might be wondering, what type of insanity? Why do you have this file? It's 800 lines long. Well, we tried making it modular, but Mirage didn't like it. And so I was like, man, this is going to be quite terrible if it all has to be in one file. Because I was like, I'll just split these up by their different modules and import them in and stuff. No, I didn't like it. So, and I think it's because if it wouldn't be that bad if we didn't have to do everything by hand, because they have a lot of stuff built in. Like if we weren't using JSON API, the quick start, the stuff that it shows is actually pretty easy. Like they have shorthands. Let's see if we get the shorthands. Yeah, you just say this. You just put that and it knows, oh, users goes to the user's Mirage database. And so since it does all that stuff automatically, it wouldn't be that big of a file. And you can set up fixtures on how you generate the data as well. That's what they're showing here. You can say, okay, give me 20 users, and this is sort of how you generate the data using Faker and stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked it, and we're looking forward to using it in our tests. How about that? Because our tests work great, except for we have one test that passes, except that it fails at the very end because it goes to a page where we're using a Phoenix socket, and the way we loaded our Phoenix library, apparently doesn't work in a test environment, which we're not really sure why, and we haven't had time to take a look and fix it. So, there we go. That's my sharing. That's me blabbing about Ember.
Very nice. Nice to see some Ember going on. It's been a while since I had a chance to play around with it.
Yeah, our discussions at our stand-up this morning were talking about different data things, and our conclusion was that it's the least painful of all the choices we could have picked. You know, like, at least it's like I view as like Ember's so consistent in terms of the group is using it in a certain way, and there's sort of semi-standards that like your pain is experienced by a bunch of other people, so at least like you have group therapies and solutions. You know, it isn't like we did our own custom build, own custom framework, and here's this problem we have, and you put it on Stack Overflow, and people are like, I don't know, you know, like
right.
Here we have a chance we can find our solution.
It's a very, very positive and mature comment.
We're all old.
Well, that's the first time I've actually heard anyone say anything bad about Ember, so it's fun to hear at the very least.
Oh yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
I have something I can share.
Yeah. All right.
So really quick. So where are you? Yeah. So I help out with a code school. I was putting together a workshop for them on how to do estimation, and as part of that, I started writing out like, okay, just reach back into my experience and like the questions that I like now know to ask that I definitely have forgotten to ask in the past when doing an estimate, and kind of started. I was like, all right, I'll just make a little sheet of that and give it to people. And before long, it was like huge, and I figured, you know, might as well make it collaborative and open it up to other people as well. So I put this up on GitHub, and I would love it if people would contribute to it. But it's this big list of questions that, in my experience, are just super important questions to ask, and ones that often get forgotten to ask. So stuff like, is there an area for administrators? Is there an area for super users? You know, what happens when a given entity is deleted is like a perennial one that I've seen. Like people just forget to ask. Like business analysts forget to ask it all the time. Difference between deleting to say, well, what happens to anything that references this entity? What happens to anything that this entity references? System browser requirements, a lot of times they are different for different roles, right? So I've had plenty of applications where they're like, okay, well, this one screen really does need IE9 support, but nothing else does. Nobody using any of the other parts of the application's going to be using old browsers, which can make things so much easier, right? And actually, you know, at the point where you're like, okay, there's one screen that needs IE9 support, just write an IE9 specific style sheet just for that screen that just hard codes the widths and you're fine. You know, offline functionality, authentication, how will authentication work? Do people register themselves to use OAuth? Is there going to be a beta invite system? How are invites sent? Is there a UI? Forgotten passwords, usernames, which people forget to estimate on pretty regularly and is not easy to get right. And we have a link here if you've never seen this right here. This is Troy Hunt's write-up about how to actually do a password reset so that you're not, you know, you're not an asshole who doesn't get security correct. So, that's the checklist for that, by the way. What are the different rules in the system? Who has access to what? And this to which functionality? And this is one I actually ran into doing a code review yesterday. Who has access to which data? So a lot of times people forget to put access control on individuals, so like, okay, only authorized users have access to the system, but do all users have access to all data? And I found a couple of routes in this, like for an application, store information on minors and like personal information on kids. And it's like, yeah, but anyone with access to the system who can find an ID can look up personal information on any kid. Like you can't ship that. That's exactly what VTech is getting into trouble for right now. But like,
Isn't it amazing? A lot of these security things, like we pay attention to lists too, because I have a bunch of friends that's what they do is security consultant stuff. So they always email me when frameworks have security things. But the stuff that they find for holes are things where I'm like, if I was doing that, I'd already be going, that's probably not a good idea.
Well,
you know, like you're catching here is like immediately you recognize like children's data. Should everyone have access to it?
right.
Probably not. Like a reasonable person can go, this is not a good thing.
It's like, oh, okay, but there is a GUID ID, but like, yeah, you send out GUID IDs elsewhere because you don't tightly control what models get returned on every single request. So like that information is leaked all over the place. It's like, you can't count on that. Yeah, or someone sends someone else a URL. There you go. That also. Stuff like how often will certain pages be accessed? Infrastructure is a big one that people forget, right? Who's going to support the deployment? How will the application be deployed? Who's going to handle setting up SSL? How will the health be monitored? How are you going to?
That's not really something you can decide up front before estimate, though, because isn't that like the 1, 2, 3 not it rule?
Well, no, but you know what? You do have to talk about it, right? Because it's going to affect your estimate, and then especially so for us, it's, for Surge, it's not so bad because we have an infrastructure, and we take that into account, and also we don't do fixed bid contracts. But first of all, tons of people are still doing fixed bid contracts.
Yeah.
That do need to take that into account. They've got a client that they didn't think of it, and the client didn't think of it, and now it needs to get done, and the client's pushing you to do it for free.
Yeah, fixed bids, that's like the bane of the developer's existence, because that's what demands that you have all your requirements up front. You know what I'm saying?
But even if it's not like this is just for fixed bid. I mean, even if you say categorically I don't do fixed bid, you still have to do estimates because people still need to know scope of work.
Right,
Like,
right.
they
I'm
need to
saying
know
that
how
it's not so critical. Like if you miss something,
Yes. Yeah, like something like that's not as big a deal. I'll go through a couple more of my favorites. Forgetting to consider migration from old systems, and even if you do consider that, forgetting to have a strategy for, okay, we deployed, we migrated data into the new system. Holy crap, we have a show-stopping bug. We have to roll back. How does the data that went into the new system now get pushed back into the old system? That sort of thing, you need to have a contingency for. And you need to plan ahead for.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
On the migration, something that has beaten me many times in the past is if there is a legacy application and the client has some expectation on having the new app resemble very closely the old one. Oh man, that's been a nightmare.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like visually?
No, like
The
what's the
what?
requirement for the screen? The same thing as the old system.
Right, exactly.
What does the old system do?
Yeah,
I'm not even sure how to express that though, like in like a checklist format. It's like
just something that came to mind.
Yeah.
So many times it's like, oh yeah, we have this legacy application. It's this client-server application, Java, Foxborough, whatever, has screens with millions of tabs and columns and whatever, and we need that on the web. Can you do it?
Just make it work like the old one.
Exactly, right? Because then they draw if they come back to you and say, oh, I just need to add this one field to that form. How long does it take, right? And then you ask the old developers, they're like, oh yeah, you need to add a field here, you need a migration for the database, you need this, that, and the other. And then they expect that on the new system, it's going to be exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know how you would add that here, but it's something that's beaten me so many times in the past.
Fork this thing, give me a pull request.
Right.
No, I absolutely agree. My previous project. See, I think that's like somewhere where having a good project manager can be really key and good infrastructure around you. Because like my previous project had the same issue where they had their entire business working around their old application, and nobody really knew how their business actually worked. So when we're writing a new existing application, we're like asking, how does this work? Everyone's going, oh, I don't actually know. I just kind of put this here and it appears over there, but I'm not actually sure what's happening. And we actually ended up pushing them on it until they hired a new like high level person whose sole job was to like take stock of how their business works so that they could describe it to us.
It's amazing how often that happens.
We lost tons of
like, yeah, how does this work? We don't know. Like,
yeah,
we work here every day.
Tons of hours in that, tons of like, probably months in that churn. Yeah. Yeah. Here's a good one. Who's going to handle support, user support, and questions, and how long are you expected to support bugs? That's something people don't tend to ask. And then, of course, like, what exactly is necessary for MVP? Like, can you get away with just like some scripts or some Excel macros and then, just to prototype the idea and build up from there? And another good one is file uploading, maximum file size, minimum file size. What are expectations as far as speed and frequency of up and downloads? So all good stuff. So
for me, FileStack. Have you used FileStack.io?
No. I mean,
it's a rename for a file picker, but they've renamed it so many times. But FilePicker.io or FileStack.io.
FileStack.io.
That's the one that does like some processing on the images and things like that, right?
Yeah, FilePicker.io. Yeah, they can change their name. See, there you go. Whatever. So yeah, like you just drag and drop, not drag and drop, but like you just drop this JavaScript stuff in there, and they can upload any file and connect to Dropbox and Google Drive and whatever else they want to. Crop the image, upload the stuff, and then
that is cool.
And then you have for the CDN delivery stuff, you can actually pass in different parameters, and it'll do the image processing for you.
It's like a third-party service, so you can like
file uploads.
Yeah, it's pretty. I used to do it by hand, and so when I saw it, I was like, it's not that big of a deal. But after using it, I'm like, man, we use it all the time.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I still think it's something you have to take into account.
Yeah, it is.
The client won't necessarily want to pay for it for one thing.
Well, ours is security stuff. Like we had to set up our system a very particular way because we're uploading sensitive doctor information, like not the patients but the doctors, because obviously they don't want their like DEA license online, so people can get all sorts of morphine in their name. So we had to like handle the handing off and certain things a way that Ian, my coworker, figured all that stuff out. But it's more secure. But yeah, it's something you have to consider. Even if you're like, hey, we can upload all the things. Well, now all this information is up there for free online that someone's can figure it out by URL crawling and stuff. So make sure it's okay. Cool. People's profile pics, it's okay.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a good one. I'll add that to the just in my pocket. But anyway, on this, it's Creative Commons, fork it, pull request it, edit it, pull request it.
You got to break this down into like back end and front end estimation.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that would be nice for this is probably giving it some more structure, because right now it really is just a completely unorganized list.
I'll take a look at this in more detail because I'm doing some stuff that's related to all this, so it's be actually kind of useful.
Yeah. Good. I hope it's actually kind of useful.
Moderately.
I like the questions that are things that the really point is like almost like reminders, the things that you're not thinking about when you're doing the estimations. And when you read, you go, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm very careful. Like I even actually say at the top, like this isn't a methodology, like right? It's not a replacement. It's just a checklist. That's all I want it to be. But yeah, cool. That's what I have to show. I have some other stuff that I also started doing this weekend, but that's not quite ready. I'll show it on a future meeting. All right.
Well,
All right, I think I have two things I can go over
right.
real quick. Let me share my screen here.
All the way from Brazil.
All the way from Brazil, man. All right, can you guys see my screen yet?
There we go.
All right, so two things actually before this one. Among the books that I've mentioned that recently I finished, I read this one, Breaking the Time Barrier, which is a short book written by the guy who created FreshBooks. Interesting book. It's essentially, talking to those of us who struggle to figure out, how do we come up with what our hourly rate should be, right? And then he talks about that, and the main point being, instead of trying to put a value to your hour, try to put a value on what the thing you're going to be building for the client's going to be worth for him, right? So I think it actually goes along with the the estimation thing that George was talking about, right? Because as you're estimating, at that point, following what the guy talks about in this book, you would also be looking at, all right, I'll build this thing for you. How much is this worth to you? That will drive, how much my time is actually worth to you. Not entirely sure exactly how to apply this to every project, whether it's even possible to do so, but it does add a different spin, at least for things that I'm doing. Like I have a company, a friend's company here in Brazil. He wants me to help him out with some of his software needs. And for me, it's been kind of hard to actually put a price on it, because if I charge him my lowest rate in American terms, it's still way too expensive for him to pay me here in Brazil. So what I'm trying to do is, as much as I want to help him, because he's an old friend of mine, I need to make sure that I can make meets end. And so I'm really looking into, all right, how is this going to affect your company? How is this going to be worth to you? And then we'll figure out a price, put a price tag on it later. But anyways, it's just something that I read and I found an interesting way to go about it. Has anybody read this book here on the call?
Nope. Reading it right now.
Nobody? All right. So it's a 70-page book, but it's a pretty quick read. All right.
The author of this book is the guy who did what? It's FreshBooks?
FreshBooks, yeah. If you guys are not familiar with FreshBooks, it's essentially a time tracking website where you can do your timesheet and stuff, and then create invoices to your clients. I've been using this for, I don't know, 5, 6 years now. It's been working well. And just the guy who created it wrote the book here.
Cool.
All right. Awesome. And then the other thing, so a couple of days ago, I was looking into that one project where I'm doing the Rails and Angular integrations, seeing how that works on this one project. And then I thought, oh, okay, this place here, I would like to use some sort of dialogue. And then I thought, well, I remember experimenting with an Angular dialogue module from somebody. I said, okay, how do I bring that into my Rails project? So looking around, I found this one gem here, Rails Assets, or it's actually a whole service, right, where you can essentially go to your gem file and do something like this, right, gem Rails Assets, and then the our package name. I said, okay, this sounds promising, but then I saw that big tag up there. Please read about the present and future of Rails Assets org. And then, I mean, it's a very long post, and how the website or the URL where they're hosting this service, where it essentially keeps track of all the latest components of the thing that you're trying to install. Apparently, it's gonna, they're gonna shut down. So there's some company who's gonna be keeping it through the end of 2016. Some people say, well, it's going out. It's going out because Bower is dying, so they're changing that in favor of NPM, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, God damn it! I just want to bring in that one Angular thing into my project. How do I do this, right? So I wanted to bring this up here. Not sure if somebody has gone through this. Will have any directions, anything I could look into as to how I can solve something that apparently should be simple, I thought.
Wait, so what exactly is the issue?
Like bringing in the JavaScript file?
Yeah, right. So if I'm working on like say an application where all the front end is there in Angular, has a separate project, and then I have Rails in the back end as the API, all right, I can go to my my JavaScript files and pull them into the project, adding references to them. Since I'm in Rails and there is the asset pipeline and all that, how do I bring that reference in it, right? Do I go to the index page and import, right, add a link to the source there? Or what do I do?
I just
for
bring
Angular,
the file over.
there's some gem that brings in. So you just bring in whatever latest file you find.
Yeah, so I used to do the gem route, and I wasn't very satisfied with that because sometimes it would get different versions, and then it was kind of like, what's this gem's really doing for me? And then I tried Bower, and Bower sort of has the same thing because like it's not really a package manager. Like in a way it is, but in a way it isn't. And I'm sort of like annoyed that like, okay, it's doing the builds, and at the end, like all I really wanted Bower was the distribution file. Like I didn't need all these other files and referencing it kind of weird. So I just went old school with the stuff and just be like, I copy the file in and I reference it, because the stuff on the front end is not the same sort of dependency management nightmare that I think that the back end can be. Like the back end is going to require these other libraries, and these other libraries of these versions, but it's very rare to have front end libraries requiring other front end libraries that they don't come packaged with. If that makes sense. Like I can think like maybe Backbone's going to require underscore, but I think it might already have it packaged in. Like there's ways that the front end sort of isolate their dependencies inside there, and like you might need, like a bunch of libraries might need jQuery or might need Angular, but that's something you can easily manage.
Right.
So I just brought the file in because also you know what version it is. You know exactly what version it is because you can look at the file and at the very top it'll be like, this is Angular dialog version 2.44 or something. Like I know exactly which one this is and how to use it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like when I was troubleshooting that issue with the Angular templates, and then somebody on the GitHub issue asked, what version of Angular you're using, and I'm like, well, shit, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt so stupid. Like, how can I not know the answer to that question? Well, I just can't. I brought in that gem that's supposed to bring the stuff in and been using it, so I don't know.
Ember, like someone asked me the other day, like, what version of Ember are you using right now? And I'm like, 2?
Okay, gotcha. So, and you also don't use then like CDNs, so that you can like benefit from caching and stuff like that, or that doesn't matter?
I don't know. So again, I have it all on my side, and since Sprockets, whatever's going to package it all together and condense it. If you package it all together, condense it, and then put that in a CDN for your own app, then I'm not really sure like using the third-party CDN is going to save you all that much. And what I also like about it is I can work on it without having internet connection.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
So there's little things like that, and I'm sure it's also one of the things where it's like, okay, our JavaScript libraries are very large. We're trying to reduce that, but then I remember someone had the blog post back in there, like, if you're worried about page load speeds, worried less about your JavaScript libraries and more about your images, like, because if a normal size image is way bigger than most of your JavaScript files, so it's like, don't get too upset about its bloat, but there are things you can do to manage it. The CDN, when I had a Rails app and I did not use a CDN to deliver my assets for stuff, that was slow, because I had Rails trying to serve that stuff in Rails is just not going to handle as well. But once I pushed that out there, it became a lot faster. I'm trying to remember what tool I used for that. It was easy set up. And I thought we did that in the project we worked together. I might have done it though.
I don't recall.
Yeah, let me see what if I can pull. I'm just going to look at my gem file and.
Does Rails still do the whole asset management pipeline thing, or did they drop it?
Sprockets, baby.
That was a nightmare, I remember, every time I tried to do anything with Rails. It's like, I just want a little bit of JavaScript that I knew how to write to run, and it's like, no.
Like, Google Asset Sync Rails.
Google Asset Sync Rails.
Let's see if your Google has the same results as mine.
Let's see.
I guess you're doing.
No, I don't
different
know
browser.
what screen I'm sharing anymore. Oh, yeah, here. For browser Windows here open. So that's what
I
you're
like
getting.
the second one was awesome. Why I hate Asset
Second
Sync.
one.
But the top one.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, so
Rails.
that's what I was using, and it worked great. And it just syncs
Okay.
to the S3 account, and it was pretty easy to get hooked up and going, if I remember correctly. Plus, I deployed to
nice.
Heroku, and it would do that for me too.
Okay.
I want to say for me, getting going, it was probably one of those. It's not like an hour, maybe a couple more, because I had a lot of learning to do. But then after I got it running, it just worked. It's like I didn't have to touch it again.
Okay.
Ever. So.
Yeah. Good. Yes, saving that. That'll come in handy.
Yeah, and you can tell that it's going to make a difference if you look at your page loads and you notice the network request to receive your CSS and your JavaScript is taking up a huge part of your network time for loading up.
Okay.
And so to me, it was taking 2 to 5 seconds or whatever. Like it was significant. Like it was like you're like, this is slow. What's going on? And then you're like, oh my god, it's loading up all these other things. This was taking forever. And then did this, and a huge performance gain.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks. Yeah, that's what I had for today.
I think we're at the hour too.
Yeah, it was a pretty good day. Got to share a lot of stuff. Got all the links opened up.
Yeah.
I'll make sure we get those all captured. Again, we have the virtual brown bag site. Let me just make sure to share that at the very end.
Yeah.
See that. So again, virtual brown bag site has our Twitter and our Slack channel stuff, and we'll keep on sharing and announcing things. And next week we have, for our first guest speaker, be talking about React Native, and that should be pretty good because I'm interested in seeing how that's all going, because I'd had PhoneGap experience back in the day, and it was not super positive, but I've heard good things about React Native, and some people I know who have switched to doing that's what they used for their mobile development. So I'm curious to see how that in action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And yeah, and
I'll
we're
see if
going
I
to
can
keep
get-
growing and keep organizing it better to take over the Tuesday at 12:30 Central spot.
Yeah, and actually market it,
Yeah. Yeah, other than me just putting in a couple Slack and Hip chat rooms.
Yeah. All right, guys. Good seeing you. Talk to you
Thanks
later.
a lot. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.